I think that the most positive social psychological change that will last after the end of the pandemic is likely to be the ability to make real and meaningful social connection at a distance. That is, using the kind of tools we're using now to actually feel connected to somebody. I can see my colleagues doing things like having a toast over the Zoom now. We're actually doing this to welcome a new faculty member, Lynn Bion. Um, my daughter is playing games with groups online this way, with Zoom and so forth, Dungeons and Dragons. And so I think this will be a skill. It's been debatable for a long time about whether people sort of in online settings are really making social contact and feeling social connection. But I think that one of the things we're learning is the skill of how to do that in these current circumstances. And that means that long distance friendships and relationships can be bolstered more easily at the end of the pandemic. So I think as we have seen, the psychological evidence sort of is mixed about whether online connection, social connection is really functional in the way that face-to-face is. So I think there will need to be the development of certain kinds of skills related to wisdom, things like improved perspective taking, understanding what people are seeing in you, how they're thinking about the connection you're making, increased empathic resonance. So there's a distinction often made between empathic resonance and sort of empathic cognition. And I think that sort of feeling what other people are feeling in taking perspective when you're connecting to them socially, I think is going to be critical. And I think that reflection is going to be part of that as well. That is, what you take from that social interaction, how you reflect on it and make use of it, how it affects you in the future, I think is also important. I think it's the complement of what I was just saying. That is, as people become more socially distanced and isolated, they may lose some of the skills of face-to-face interaction. That is, they may start to become more sort of in their own heads and less adept at sort of connecting to other people. So I think there's a risk, at least for some people in society, we're not making use of these tools and not connecting effectively with these tools to basically withdraw within themselves and lose the sense of that social connection. So we become at risk for greater social isolation, and not physical social isolation, but as Cassiopo talked about it, this sort of increasing negative construal about our social interactions so that we feel bad and become sort of worse off as a function of those social connections. So I think it requires this notion of reflection, but reflection that's not, as a clinician might refer to it, rumination. That is, not sort of cycling through the bad thoughts and focusing on those, but actually reflecting on and taking the perspective of other people and learning to ask other people about what their states are like and learning to learn about other people. So I think it's that notion of being open to other people's states, open to other people's values and considerations that becomes important. I think going back to this issue of reflection and thinking about it in terms of self-awareness, that is, becoming more thoughtful and aware of what your values are and how best to satisfy or address those values under the current constraints, I think is critical. So what are the things that you can do for yourself that bolster your sense of self, bolster your own human flourishing, and how you can maintain what is important to you about social connections and develop those?